1,000 songs. Only one survived according to the tradition. Guess which one? This song. He wrote 1,000 of them, none of which have ever been discovered, except this one. Go on, Tony.
The wedding mentioned in the book is in Solomon.
Yes, the wedding mentioned in the book is of Solomon. Good. Next. So in short, he has an extensive knowledge of nature and of the surrounding areas of what would be part of the United Kingdom. This implies two things. One, there's a United Kingdom. Okay? This is mentioned in, he admires the loveliness of Tirzah and compares it to the beauty of Jerusalem. An assessment better accounted for in the reign of Solomon than afterwards, because Tirzah became the capital of the northern kingdom rather than the southern kingdom, where Jerusalem was. So it implies that there was a united kingdom going on. The only time there was a united kingdom of Israel, okay, was under David's rule and under Solomon's rule. So that seems to imply that there isn't a difference between northern and southern Israel. Okay, so that's an important internal evidence that supports the traditional idea. His extensive wisdom or understanding of the natural world is in part given to his wisdom. Solomon was known for his great wisdom, so he would have extensive knowledge of nature, which is reflected in the book of Ecclesiastes, which also traditionally falls under Solomon's auspices. Now, that's the traditional understanding. What is the modern understanding?
Modern understanding is sort of divided on the fact that the modern scholars are divided on the fact that there is no plot in the writing of the book. But the style of the framework, they all agree on. And the point for it now is that
Okay.
around 500 BC. And the most reliable evidence for that is the
Aramaic language? Yes? Okay. All right. The modern understanding is, in short, I'm going to keep it brief because we still have 2 more groups and I want to make sure we have everyone do this. But this is an important point. There is a lot of good evidence internally to show that it was traditionally written before the divided monarchy. However, the biggest linguistic study of the song shows that there are several choice borrowed words, one from Persia, one from Greek, that have been introduced into the song, which implies it was written after the exile. Okay? Because otherwise they wouldn't have known these Persian and Greek words. Why would they be there if it was written before they went to exile. That doesn't make sense. Okay? So modern scholars today believe that the song is a composition of pseudonymous authors that compiled it after the exile. Which means what? After 500, what word? 500, after 500 and before 200 BC. Okay? So if it was King Solomon, it would have been around 980 BC. Okay? Around 900 BC. Okay? So that's a significant difference. Those are huge time period differences. What is the synthesis of these two? Because both have equally good points. You can't just deny these loan words from Persia and Greek. Well, why are they there if it was written in the 900s? On the other hand, how come it doesn't sound like there's a northern and southern kingdom if it was written after the exile? So here is a good synthesis. I like what it says here. In the end, one must admit that the Song of Solomon embodies a curious mixture of early and late date features, along with signs of northern and southern interest that make it difficult to settle the questions concerning its authorship and date. The observations made by critical scholars should not be downplayed or ignored, but neither should those that favor the tradition of Solomonic authorship. In point of fact, arguments advanced to demonstrate that the song is a post-exilic work may tell us more about the date of its final form than about the date of its original composition. And I think that's the key. I would, in this reporter's opinion, I would say that the majority of the corpus was written or traditionally passed on from the time of Solomon. But its final form that we have it today was a composition that added post-exilic words and authorship points. So it's a both question, it's not an either or. I think it has elements that take us back to Solomon as its original author, and has elements that were added to it later after the return of the exile. So it's the majority of the work, very much like Daniel. You remember those of you who were with me when we studied Daniel? The majority of Daniel, I believe, was written before 600 BC. But there were additions added to it clearly, none the least of which are chapters 13 and 14, which are only written in Greek, okay? But are still a part of Daniel's tradition. They were a part of the oral tradition and later codified in Greek after that period and then tagged on at the end. I think something similar is with the Song of Songs. Is that the majority of it, the corpus, the basic form, was written or at least transmitted from Solomon, and then later additions were added after the exile. I think that best explains all of the elements that we see. Does that make sense?
Who would have added?
Who would have added them? That's a very good question. My guess would have been priests or scribes that were carrying parts of the tradition of Solomon and then were using the loan words to help express it. Does that make sense? Good. Let's move on to the themes and characteristics. Group 5. What are the themes and characteristics of the Song of Solomon? It's a love poem, right? Okay. I'm sorry?
Loyalty between.
Oh, loyalty between God and his people. Good. Good. Some of the characteristics of the book are exactly that. It's a love poem between a man and a woman. Whether it's Solomon and one of his future wives, that's one approach to look at it. But even if you don't accept that, the poem itself is a love poem between a man and a woman. Okay? Now, the various interpretations of it are as a religious allegory, okay, which is by far the most common reading of the song. Both Jewish and Christian tradition symbolize God's relationship with his people. Okay? So it's a love poem. The other part is it's a religious allegory. So in other words, if we just forget that this is even between Solomon and one of his queens or anything like that, the poem itself can be viewed solely as a religious allegory of God's love for his people. Okay? Another way of looking at it is that it's a literary drama. It is a love story between Solomon and the Shulamite maiden whom he falls madly in love with. Okay? So the other part is a literary drama. And fourthly, it's a wedding song.
Third, collection of love poetry for the soul.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Thank you.
Collection of love poetry.
It's love poetry. That kind of goes with number one. I kind of put these out of order because I went with what Ricky was telling me. So it's a love poem, and then fourth, it's a wedding song. I'll just keep that. Wedding song. Okay. So just looking at it literarily, linguistically, these are some of the characteristics that this has. Okay? I want to keep in time here. I want to get us to our sixth group, which is kind of going to answer question 3. How does covenant fit into reading the Song of Solomon? But the question is, describe the relationship between the Song of Solomon and Solomon's other writings. What can we say about these 3 works attributed to the Song of to Solomon?
They relate to the 3 stages of growth of spiritual life.
Okay, how?
The second and third question answer that for us.
Good, so answer it.
The second question is what is the Jewish tradition for these?
Okay.
And the Jewish tradition is that Solomon's song relates to our youth.
Oh, okay, our youth.
Passions and everything that goes with it.
Yeah.
Proverbs is mature years.
Uh-huh.
And Ecclesiastes is they call it old age.
They call it what?
Old age.
Old age. Okay. So the green are the Jewish understanding of how the spiritual life is developed. Life is love relationships, your youth, you're young, you're falling in love, you're building your family. That's the Song of Solomon. You get older and wiser, you begin a little bit more pensive, you come up with all these wise and pithy sayings and aphorisms. That's the Proverbs. And then in your old age, you realize everything is vanity, it's pointless, it's useless, there's nothing new under the sun. except to remember God in the days of your youth. That's the ending of the book of Ecclesiastes. What's the Christian understanding as to the development of the spiritual life?
It comes from Origin of Alexandria.
Mm-hmm.
That Solomon teaches rules of upright living in Proverbs.
Okay, so rules for living. Uh-huh.
Virtue in Ecclesiastes.
How so?
Distinguishing what is profitable in this world and what is not. From what is
Good.
not.
Contempt of the world. Or I should say worldly things. Contempt for worldly things. Good. Song of Solomon?
Love for divine things in the Song of Solomon, stressing that communion with God is attained principally by love.
Yes. That's part of the reason why this commentary series is written in this form. Why did we get the Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs? Because in the Christian tradition, these three books of Solomon teach us, or they are like a stepping stone on the spiritual life. Proverbs teach you the rules to live by, okay? The wisdom of how to live properly in the world. Ecclesiastes tells you contempt of worldly things. Don't get attached to the things of this world because it's all fruitless, pointless vanity. The world is vain. Give it up. Live in it properly, but don't be attached to it. That's Ecclesiastes. The Song of Solomon tells us about divine love and how it draws us into union with God. Once we know how to live rightly, we reject the world, we come to God, and we become united with Him. This is the mystical steps of the spiritual life. And that is the premise by which we are going to be approaching the Song of Solomon. We're going to be seeing how to unite to this divine love call, like a bride to her